Joining me now, California Congresswoman Karen Bass, the incoming chair of the CBC. Thank you so much for joining us. You doing okay?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Let me just tell you, congratulations on your new position. Democrats are going to take over the House come January. What do you think the priority should be for Democrats and for the CBC?
Oh, well, absolutely. Number one on our agenda is a piece of legislation that encompasses the Voting Rights Act, that also looks at corruption and really looks at money in politics, some issues that we found over this campaign were very important to voters and constituents. And then also we have to deal with the price of prescription drugs and income inequality. So we have a big agenda. The Republicans have been in power for 8 years, and we have an awful lot of repair that we need to do to this nation.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a lot to do. You know, Congresswoman, CNN has unearthed audio of Republican Congressman Steve King appearing on a far-right podcast, a podcast which frequently gave white nationalists a platform and whose host has argued that some races are less intelligent than others. And in the interview, Congressman King said this about the Congressional Black Caucus. Listen to this.
The self-segregating Congressional Black Caucus, but it's not. They more or less hijacked his movement and turned it into their grievance committee, and now they're pressing all of us for special benefits based upon race.
How do you respond to that?
Well, you know, there isn't anything that Steve King could say that would really surprise me. You know, recently he was talking about a political party in Austria, and he said, and it's actually a Nazi party, and he said that if you took their platform and brought it to the United States,
they'd be Republicans.
They would be Republicans. Yeah. You know, he has been an open white supremacist. He has even embarrassed his own party. In this last election, the head of the Republican campaign committee basically disassociated themselves from him,
and he
cut
still
off
won.
his money,
and he still won. But let me ask you, you've been in Congress, both you and Congressman King have been in Congress for a number of years. Have you ever had any interactions with him?
Yes, I have. I serve on the Judiciary Committee with him, and I have had to sit in the same room with him as he has made very racist comments toward immigrants.
He's called the CBC a grievance committee.
Right. Well, he called it, and he said we were asking for special benefits, all of which is a complete lie. He knows absolutely nothing about the Congressional Black Caucus, and I bet he wasn't even aware that a colleague in his caucus, a Republican woman, is a member of the Congressional Black Caucus. So nothing that he says about people of color surprises me. You remember what he said about immigrants. They had calves the size of cantaloupes because they carry drugs. He said that people of color have contributed nothing. It's only been Western civilization that has contributed anything to the world. So the thing that is very sad about him is that he is profoundly ignorant. And I would think that the state of Iowa would be embarrassed by him. Now, I do have to say that he had a tough election this time. So maybe the voters of Iowa are getting tired of him. And 2020 can't come fast enough. They will have another shot at it, and hopefully they'll be able to retire him in the next election.
So let me talk. I want to ask you about this, because we've been doing these special reports here on CNN called The State of Hate. And earlier this month, the FBI released a report showing that there was double-digit uptick in hate crimes nationally. What do you think is behind that?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, when you have someone in the White House who is also openly racist, I think he has given a license to white supremacists where they felt maybe they needed to be a little, you know, in the closet, behind the scenes, and now they have an open license. I mean, just think about it. We had 4 acts of domestic terrorism right before the election. The president wouldn't even refer to it as domestic terrorism, and each act of terrorism was done by a white supremacist organization. And at the same time, the FBI wants to investigate young African Americans who protest police violence. And so instead of talking about black identity extremists, we need to talk about white identity extremists. We need to call it for what it is. It is a terrorist organization, and we need to address it appropriately.
That is something that the country grapples with, and people who share sentiments like you share often get a lot of criticism about that and a whole lot of pushback. I want to talk to you about the acting Attorney General, because you're also on the House Judiciary Committee, which just announced that the acting Attorney General, Matt Whitaker, that he has a commitment to appear sometime in January. What do you want to ask him about?
Well, I mean, I think there's many things that we want to ask him about. You know, in particular, I mean, he was chief of staff to Jeff Sessions, and so how much dialogue was there in terms of the Mueller investigation? We know that the president would like to shut that investigation down. We know that there's conflicts of interest with him. So what has happened over the last 2 years since Trump has been in office, the Republicans essentially have provided absolutely no oversight, no investigation. And so when the Democrats take over in January and we're able to do oversight and investigation, there unfortunately is so much work for us to do because nothing has been done over the last 2 years. And they're still chasing Hillary Clinton's emails.
Yeah. The House Judiciary Committee also has jurisdiction over voting rights proposals.
Right.
What would you like to see done on that front before the next election cycle?
Sure. Well, first of all, this last election, there was just egregious examples across the country of voter suppression. I mean, what happened in the state of Georgia, you know, really sounded like another country. You have the Secretary of State, the person who's in charge of elections, actually running for office, made no sense at all. And so I think one of the first things we need to do is document the problems that happened in this election to establish the record so that we can make the adjustments that the Supreme Court called for in the Voting Rights Act.
Congresswoman Bass, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Happy holidays to you.
Same to you.